Leading into Memorial Day weekend, Mayor Hagerty put forward a proposal to name 3 additional Freedom of Information officers. Introducing his proposal on the Friday before a long weekend is inconsistent with Evanston's democratic values. The manner in which this proposal has been introduced was meant to ensure the fewest Evanstonians possible would be aware of its existence. The preamble to the Illinois Freedom of Information Act lays out the importance of FOIA to our democracy. It declares access to full and complete information regarding the affairs of government and the official acts and policies of public officials and employees. FOIA is key to enabling the people to discuss public issues fully and freely, make informed political judgments, and monitor government to ensure that it is working in the public interest. When it comes to a service as important as FOIA, we should be having a thoughtful public discussion, not a rushed vote. Because FOIA was created to give residents power to hold government accountable, not to make elected officials feel comfortable. Let me first state, the mayor's proposal will unequivocally weaken the authority of the city clerk, an elected official whose office is directly accountable to the public, by reassigning the vast majority of public records to Freedom of Information officers accountable only to the city manager. The mayor believes this proposal will provide parity with Evanston's former practice of having multiple Freedom of Information officers, similar to other communities. I must remind the mayor of the facts. The 2014 FOIA policy did designate 3 FOIA officers. However, all 3 of these officers were staff of the city clerk's office, including the clerk himself. After the passage of Resolution 87R17, the city clerk was named as ex officio Freedom of Information officer. The clerk was granted the authority to designate other Freedom of Information officers. Under our current arrangement, I am the Freedom of Information Act officer, as is the deputy clerk. Seasonal staff are available to assist as directed. Built upon the false supposition that the clerk is the sole FOIA officer, the mayor's proposal attempts to solve a capacity problem that cannot be clearly articulated nor supported with facts and data. The mayor's memo is not incorrect when citing figures demonstrating records requests have nearly doubled since 2016. However, it is not clearly explained how this has caused a strain on the system or a delay beyond statutory limits. As the city's lead Freedom of Information officer, I was never consulted on the merits of the mayor's proposal, nor brought in to provide insight on any of the perceived issues. Upon taking office 2 years ago, I sought to align services provided by the clerk's office with our new mission, to be Evanston's Office of Transparency and Public Participation. A review of the city's organizational chart shows the residents at the top above the mayor, council, and city manager. Adjacent to the residents is the clerk's office. We serve as the public's assistant, as a conduit of information, and as the first stop for concerned citizens looking to ensure government fully reflects our values of equity. To realize this vision, I struck a good faith agreement with the mayor and the city manager. Passport and real estate transfer stamps were relocated to the collector's office with a promise of an alternative, advocacy-oriented service such as property tax appeals being moved into the clerk's office. While many parts of this bargain were never upheld, the office was granted the ability to handle the substantially increased flow of FOIA requests. It is exactly because of this realignment that we are able to support residents when city departments attempt to deny access to records requests. We take the time to follow up with the Attorney General's FOIA pre-clearance department and other relevant government agencies. Oddly enough, there are a number of recorded examples with the police department, law department, and the collector's office where I have successfully contested the improper withholding of records. And those were all offices deemed to be named FOIA officers within the mayor's proposal. As an example, with the police department records bureau, I wrote to the Office of the Attorney General after a local law student was denied records relating to gang member identification criteria. My advocacy resulted in the police department reversing their decision and providing nearly 800 pages of our gang member database going back to the 1990s with names and birthdays redacted. An example with the law department. I contested the law department's attempt to improperly cite a 7(1) exemption for personal privacy. This was used as a justification to redact the names of businesses after information was requested regarding letters of intent for payments made by corporate entities for the use of the new Robert Crown Community Center. This information was eventually released. An example with the collector's office. A member of the public sought a list of the city's top 30 sales tax revenue producers. The department head who would supervise the mayor's proposed secondary FOIA officer recommended the city deny the request in its entirety. I stepped in and established that the list of businesses was not exempt, only the dollar amounts demonstrating tax revenue generated by the individual businesses. Lastly, we cannot ignore the context in which this proposal was introduced. A few weeks ago, I filed a lawsuit for declarative action relating to FOIA. The lawsuit focuses on the city's refusal to comply with state law as it relates to the release and retention of body camera footage and Corporation Counsel's claim that I, the elected city clerk of Evanston, am not a client of the Evanston Law Department, thus restricting my access to review certain records to ensure all redactions were made in compliance with FOIA. The city maintains the stance that I am unable to receive responsive copies of body camera footage for retention in accordance with the law because third parties, as they claim, are unable to receive those records. This is categorically false. The point of these videos being eligible for public inspection is to deter a delay in justice, as we witnessed with the execution of Laquan McDonald by Officer Jason Van Dyke. I am uniquely versed in laws regulating the public's right to access government records. I chose to run for clerk to uphold those rights at every juncture. I've raised the issues presented in my suit internally for 2 years, but to no avail. Seeking judicial intervention was the last resort. Evanston may well be the first community in Illinois with the office of an independently elected official solely responsible for the administration of the Freedom of Information Act. The Evanston I believe in has never been afraid to lead on smart policy. Having a public records officer who is directly accountable to the public is an example of Evanston leading on smart, good government policy and championing municipal transparency. Park Ridge, Glenview, Arlington Heights, DeKalb, Highland Park, and Naperville, the municipalities cited in the mayor's memo, are not analogous to Evanston. A young black engineering student finishing his PhD wasn't assaulted and arrested for stealing his own car in Park Ridge. A 12-year-old black boy and girl weren't arrested for riding on bike pegs in Naperville. A young black candidate for city clerk wasn't arrested for petitioning the day before a filing deadline in DeKalb. The communities listed in the mayor's memo lack Evanston's diversity, socioeconomic issues, and history. As the mayor's proposal stands, it fails to achieve any of the goals it has set forth. The only outcome is that my lawsuit becomes moot, and the city of Evanston receives a rollback in public accountability and transparency. I look forward to a thoughtful debate and the opportunity to provide further insight on Evanston's FOIA process. My questions to Mayor Hagerty are, what demonstrable problem does this proposal seek to solve? How will this proposal address your perceived concerns? What has changed since the last FOIA debate other than my lawsuit for transparency, warranting this drastic change in policy? Why would you propose action on policy without first consulting stakeholders? Thank you.
We're now going to move into the agenda. We have one item today, which is a special order of business. This is SP1, approving designation of additional Freedom of Information Officers, Resolution 57-R-19, appointing additional Freedom Information Officers, is submitted for consideration and approval. Is there anyone that wants to move that?
Approval.
Is there a second? Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do is is this is really a conversation for the City Council. The City Council is the governing body. It is not the city clerk. It is not the mayor. I did bring this forward. FOIA is something that I've been looking at for over 10 months now, and I would like to take just a minute, similar to what Clerk Reed did earlier. Clerk Reed did earlier, just to give a statement and just to provide some background for how I arrived where I did and how this ended up on the agenda. After that, I really wanted to open it up to a conversation, again, amongst the council members as the governing authority here, and not Clerk Reed or myself. This evening, I am proposing to the City Council that it add 3 additional FOIA officers: a police department FOIA officer, a law department FOIA officer, and 1 additional backup FOIA officer. These are in addition to Clerk Reed, who would remain a principal FOIA officer. In this role, Clerk Reed would continue to receive citizen requests via the Next Request system, assign requests, prepare standard readily available reports, close select cases out of the system, provide information to requesters on the appeal process of a FOIA response with the public access counselor within the Illinois Attorney General's office. I am recommending these additional FOIA officers because of the increase in the volume of FOIA requests, something I have been inquiring about and monitoring since August of 2018. Over the last 2 years, FOIA requests in Evanston have doubled from approximately 700 to approximately 1,400. Since residents are availing themselves of FOIA to get more information about how their government operates, I think it's prudent for the council, as overseers of the city, to ensure that our city has an adequate number of FOIA officers to meet this growing demand. I continue to hear feedback from residents who are concerned about the increase in FOIAs and whether we have enough FOIA officers. This isn't surprising, given what I've learned from others based on a quick review from similar local cities, all of whom have anywhere from 2 to 11 FOIA officers, including 10 in the police department, and that's among the 6 that were in the package. Given this peer data and increasing volume of FOIA requests, I believe it is in the city's best interest to add 3 additional FOIA officers. There would be no additional cost to the city, as 2 of these individuals are extensively involved in the current FOIA process, and 1 is a former deputy city clerk who previously served as a FOIA officer and works in the collector's office to serve as a backup officer. For those residents concerned that by adding additional FOIA offices we will change our compliance to FOIA, I assure you that is not the case. The FOIA law is clear on what information must be released to the requester and the exceptions that may be granted to government entities to withhold certain public records and documents. It is the Illinois Attorney General who ensures that all governments, including Evanston, are properly complying with FOIA when there are complaints to the contrary. I'm pleased that of the 1,400 FOIAs fulfilled last year, only 19 FOIA complaints, 0.014%, were filed. In those 19 complaints, 3 were found in favor of the city, 0 in favor of the requester, 4 rescinded by the requester because of an agreement on the documents, and 12 still to be determined. Tonight, residents have spoken passionately about their right to know, which was the basis for creating the Freedom of Information Act, so that citizens can know what is happening in the operations of their government. Adding 3 additional FOIA officers improves our city's ability to operate effectively, puts us in line with other similar cities who are responding to similar FOIA requests, and will not hinder a resident's ability to receive public records. I would suggest that if the council were to add 3 additional FOIA officers, that we ask for an annual FOIA report so that you, as our governing body, can monitor any changes and make any appropriate modifications you deem necessary. That concludes my remarks. I'm now going to open it up for public debate amongst the aldermen.
Not about the person. This is not about Clerk Reed. This is about the position in the office, and this is about the procedures and the policies and how things should work. I find it a little baffling in some of my conversations today and hearing some people talk today. I'll just come out and say it. Personally, I don't agree that giving one person 100% control over anything is a good idea as far as transparency or good governance. I think that checks and balances are required. So I think it's important for us to have those checks and balances, and I think that this is perhaps a little bit of a way to ensure that there's more than one person working on this.
That's the question. Out of all the speakers, how many people actually read through the packet? It is my honest opinion that this does not take away any power from the clerk, as I've read through it 3 times. Within this memo that I've read that diminishes his role. And so I respect the fact that we can come and have this dialogue, and I think that's where we'll move. I'll stop talking. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman Braithwaite.
I still have yet to hear any concrete evidence that demonstrates that there is an issue with compliance with the state statute. Yes, there are 1,400 FOIA requests, and yes, the number has doubled since 2016, but we have the next request system. It's a software meant to make processing FOIA requests easier and more efficient. So if someone can give facts and data and figures to demonstrate that there is a problem with the fulfillment of requests within a timely manner, then this would be a logical vote. And if anyone can demonstrate how naming additional FOIA officers would solve that problem, this would be a valid discussion and potentially a valid vote. But no one can produce any facts or figures other than the fact that the FOIA requests have increased to 1,400. That doesn't mean that there's a problem. That doesn't mean that we can't handle the volume of requests.
Bruce Simmons.
Can someone in support of this vote respond to his question?
If, for example, if the clerk were on vacation or he was ill, or there would not be a person who's authorized by the council to take the action. So those are just examples. I don't really want to put all of it in that, but this seems to me to be a best business practice, and I think that it is more transparent. So
in the event that that does happen, he's unavailable, by default there is not a designated person. Who would that be currently? We just would be unable to close out a FOIA request if he was unavailable?
I suppose.
I mean, but what's the answer?
The answer should be that we should have more than one person assigned to that. Or let's say he decided to resign or move to Australia.
No, specifically the question is, if he is not today, right now, based on our current policy, if he is unavailable for whatever reason, he takes an extended vacation, he resigns, what would be the process? Who defaults into being able to close out a FOIA request?
I thought that under the FOIA rule that exists right now, he could then appoint somebody as a designee or whatever if he was absent. What do you speak?
So I can answer that. So under the current policy, Resolution 87R17 said that the city clerk is the ex officio FOIA officer for the city of Evanston, and that I am able to name designees. So I could name the law department as a designee if I so choose. Currently, the designee is the deputy clerk because he works within the office, and the resolution gave me the authority to name any designee to step in my absence. So if I were to resign or if I were to pass out from a heart attack, immediately the deputy clerk would become the lead FOIA officer, as he would become the new city clerk, and anyone that the deputy clerk designated would then be the FOIA officer. So we have.
And I want you to know, no one wants you to have a heart attack, but if you do, 20% of the people in this room know CPR. I know, including the chief right there that walked in. All right.
Question for our corporation counsel. Can you just tell us about the cases that are open?
Sure. So Michelle Mason Cup, Corporation Counsel. I just pulled up the next request system, and two different facts. There are 19 requests that are overdue. 4 of which are attorney-client privilege communication. The clerk refuses to close those requests and demands production. 3 are body camera videos. 5 are where the city has uploaded the documents and they are ready to be released. And the remainder, it's unclear. There are 67 requests which are in a holding pattern. It's called pending in the next request system. And just based on the first page, 22 of the 25 requests that are in this holding pattern have been in holding since at least May 7th, so 3 weeks ago, and they're all relating to email communication. The city staff conducted the IT search, so they put in a message into IT, into an external message to the requester, which indicates how many search results came back. I just done a brief research during the meeting. I was looking at all of them, and they range from 800 to 100,000 emails. Please narrow the request. And this is provided under the statute. Then the requester would narrow the request so that the city staff could review the emails to see if there's anything that needs to be redacted, and then they would produce the request and close it out.
Alderman Reed, yeah, go ahead.
Alderman Reed, soon enough.
Clerk Reed.
So one, I ask, why were these figures not put forth in the memo if they help make the case? 2, the pending request is reliant, if a requester makes a request and they refuse to narrow the request, or they don't know how to narrow the request, that isn't a capacity issue. That is just an issue on whether or not the requester is willing to narrow the request, and we leave it pending. So pending request is not an issue. As far as the 18 or 19 open and overdue FOIA requests, they are overdue, and I left them open because the city is not complying with the FOIA statute. It is the reason that I filed a lawsuit for declarative action. The FOIA statute very clearly says that a copy of all responsive records are to be deposited and kept in a log by the FOIA officer. If the police department or any other department refuses to turn over responsive records and allow my ability to, and impinges upon my statutory responsibilities, then I will leave that request open and wait until they follow the law and provide a copy of responsive records. Should have been put in the memo, and so we should have the alderman hold this because new information is being presented, and it's very important for a public discussion of these facts and to have it put into a memo. So I ask for an alderman to make a motion to table this issue to a date certain, so those facts, and we can have a full examination of all of the things that you're bringing forward. But don't put forward this idea on Memorial Day weekend and then come in here at the last minute and pull an alley-oop move to try to discredit what's going on with FOIA. Put these statistics in a memo and let's discuss it publicly. So please, someone table this motion.
For the record, right? I didn't put that in the memo because that wasn't necessary for me to think that we needed 3 additional FOIA officers. But Alderman, seeing no more lights, City Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Why did this come up on Friday night?
Could you please I'm calling the roll. Could you please take the roll? City Clerk, could you please take the roll? City Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Make a motion.
Please take the roll.
Make a motion to hold.
Excuse me, sir.
You're the city clerk. Your job is to take the roll.
Excuse me.
I've asked for it 3 times.
And I will take the roll.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
I would like to know is a little more specifics about what information Clerk Reed is saying that we don't have. I'm not clear on that.
I'm happy to
point of
answer that
order,
question.
just so I understand. I call the roll.
I've got a point of order.
This was.
I think we should at least understand. I'm very supportive of the additional FOIA officers, and I'm going to vote for it if we do hold this over. But I do want to know, what is the information I keep hearing that we don't have about the backlog of FOIA requests? And I don't understand, and maybe the only person is either our law department, our Attorney Mason Cup, or Clerk Reed could tell us what that backlog is.
the information that Alderman Fisk had asked of the city attorney, just to go through some of the details of some items, I guess, that were held up or pending or in suspense, is what we just all heard right here. I don't know of anything
But it
else.
wasn't really clear to me. It wasn't, because that's the first time I've heard all that, what she said.
I've got to take the vote. The vote was called. We're going to take the vote. Please take the vote, or call the, start with Alderman Wilson. Let's see where
I'm
this
going to
goes.
vote no.
Was I.
He was aye.
I'm voting no.
He's calling the roll.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
No.
Alderman Ravel? Alderman Rainey?
I'm voting no because I'm being denied information.
Thank you.
Alderman Fleming?
No.
Alderman Fisk? Alderman Braithwaite? Alderman Nguyen?
Shame on.
Order in the chambers. Oh, I never use this. Order in the chambers. Passes 5-3. Passes 5-3. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Alderman Ruth Simmons. Alderman Ruth Simmons, could you please take us through the consent agenda?
M1, for action, approval of minutes of regular city